Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to another thrill-packed edition of the Jim Cornette Experience, but the first one, the very first one of 2019. It almost sounds like a science fiction movie now, that it's the year 2019. Will we make it to 2020? Will we make it till the end of this show? Folks, it's a brand new year. We've got a brand new wrestling promotion. We're going to talk about that. I've got a bone to pick with somebody. A mystery in wrestling history has been solved, and we will reveal the answer, and we're going to give you a free class in pro wrestling psychology, as well as a little name that tune maybe, or a name that artist, or a little inside baseball music business talk with my co-host and cohort. Once again in the new year, I've kept him another year somehow. Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's the post office playboy, Swammy's pappy, Susie's favorite boy, the proprietor of the French Toast Chateau, your friend and mine, the great Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again for another fun year, a fun action-packed year of the Jim Cornette Experience.
Right along ringside, everybody. Another big year of championship cult casting to the millions and millions of, well, Happy New Year, cult. I'll just say that right at the top of the program. See, did Jim Jones or Charles Manson or any of those other noted cult leaders before me, did they ever say Happy New Year to their minions and throngs? Or did they just expect the minions and throngs to just have a miserable New Year as long as they were happy? See, I'm a caring cult leader.
Yeah, you never hear about the holiday parties with the various cults.
You don't know what their holiday traditions were. Was the Manson family, were they turkey or ham on Christmas? Things
Pig.
like that. Possibly pig, yes. So, you need to know things like that before you can get inside people's heads. Anyway, I've gotten inside my head, and my God, what a frightening fucking experience that was. But no, it's crowded with some shit in there, boy. But no, what I did, I sound so Southern now. What I did was I went down to Goobers and I said, no, remember last week on the program, which was really like about 10 days ago, because we are recording this literally just after the new year has rung or dawned or begun or whatever the fucking starting point is. But last week's program, we had pre-taped a while, so we'd have a little break over the holidays, right? Because as the big cat Ernie Ladd said, in 1983, we show up at the end of the year in Mid-South Wrestling, and Ernie has been the booker. But now Bill Dundee is coming in to be the booker with the Memphis Crew, Midnight Rock and Roll, etc. And Ernie, I believe, was going to the Carolinas, worked for Jim Crockett. And the first TV taping we came down to, Ernie was still officially the booker and was still there. So we got to sit under the Lannon tree for just a minute. And one of the things he said, your brain is like a sponge. When it absorbs all the knowledge that it can, you must wring it out. And I'm going to wring my brain out, because he knew he was going to wrestle about another year. So he was going to Carolinas, wrestle for a little while. He wasn't going to be the booker of Mid-South Wrestling, which was high stress. And he was going to have a chance to wring his brain out. So I wrung my brain out by here's what I didn't do. I didn't speak on the telephone. I didn't email. I kept in contact with the outside world when I would Twitterfy once or twice a day. When I would come up and just check and see what was going on and just retweet some things and Twitterfy a little bit once or twice a day, so the people wouldn't think that somehow something had happened to me. And I did one time. I did fill orders. I announced to the folks that I would. Cornette's Collectibles was taking a little holiday break on terms of shipping, but I still was out that Christmas and New Year's week fulfilling orders once. So I put a total of 4 miles on my vehicle over to the post office and back once. And I didn't otherwise leave the property or have contact with the outside world, which was my Christmas present to myself for the chaos and pandemonium that is my life the other 11 months and 3 weeks out of the year, usually, as you can attest to.
Yeah.
Can you verify that?
Oh, I can attest to that. Yes.
Well, there you go. So that's what I did. But while I did some therapeutic house cleaning, because that does please me when I can, because I'm a, how would you term it? I'm a fastidious person.
Meticulous.
And I like meticulous, fastidious, anal, you could say. But we got a new vacuum cleaner. I got one of those Sharks with the super duper suction. Boy, it'll suck sand out of cement. It will take chrome off a bumper hitch. And it doesn't go into the bag. It goes into the canister that you can then just dump in the garbage, but you can actually see. It's clear plastic, right? And it just looks so just disgusting when all that shit is coming. Because now I realize how woefully inadequate my previous, and this is not even a commercial, folks. I'm just thrilled. My previous vacuum cleaner was that I see that it's left all this shit that this super duper suctionifying thing is getting up now. So that I did some carpet cleaning and some cabinet straightening. As I do every year, I did my year-end finances for my CPA. I stay ahead on stuff like that. I binge watched Tales from the Tour Bus. The season 1 was all country stars. We've come to find out now.
So season 2 was what, R&B?
Season 2 was funk.
Funk, okay.
Season 2 was George Clinton and Bootsy Collins and the two-parter on Rick James and Betty Davis, Miles Davis's ex, right? And oh God, they did James Brown. But the first season was like 2 parts on Johnny Cash and Johnny Paycheck, who apparently shot with a pistol everybody ever knew or worked with. And George Jones, the Possum, and all the country stars. And I binged watched, as the kids would say, that off Showtime. So that's tremendous. But have you seen also on Showtime? Showtime is on a roll. Enemies. Did you see this?
I heard about it. I haven't seen it yet, though. How is it?
It is a 4-part. It's excellent. It's a 4-part series on the relationship between the FBI and the Justice Department and the president, going back to when Hoover was actually a stooge for Nixon, but Hoover was kind enough to die so that they could open things up and find out all the shit that was going on with Nixon, and then boom. And so then they've tried to keep the FBI, et cetera, of the Justice Department in general, separate from the presidency. And now here we go again with all this horse shit. And it's an amazing documentary. They're doing an incredible job over there at Showtime. You can learn something off these shows.
J. Edgar Hoover really was an awful little man.
Just a toady, froggy, little man.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I straightened up the office, and that's where I've got some music. We got to go over some music. You fancy yourself a music man. Possibly.
I've been paid for those reasons a lot of money, yes.
You possibly will be a capital T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pussy after I get finished with you. Because I'll tell you. But anyway, I don't know where that was going, but I got a bone to pick with somebody anyway. Should I go ahead and pick this bone?
Yeah, I don't even know who this is. So, yeah, please.
Yeah, you're not aware of this either, because it's you. I didn't tell you about this before we went on the air because I have a bone to pick with you.
Okay.
My Christmas present to you, because you're impossible to buy for because you have everything. But my Christmas present to you was going to be that I was going to surprise you for New Year's. And because, see, to back up for some of the viewers that haven't been around, or hopefully listeners, if you're viewing us, you're peeking in our window. For the folks that haven't been listening long, Brian Lass has given me some amount of shit by the metric ton on my audio apparatus here on the program. Because what I do is I've got the same headset, microphone and headphone set that I started podcasting with in 2013, I believe. The same set plugged into the front of my little computer box down here, the computer box that they have here. And then I click on the Skype thingamabob on my computer here, the icon there on the desk, and then I click on Brian Last, and there you are, right? That's my setup here. And you have blistered me for quite a while now about how my old faithful microphone just sounds horrible, and I need to upgrade, and I need to get with the times. And so I finally decided this is what I was going to do for you. You even told me. You told me the equipment to get. You said, here's a great microphone, and here's headphones and everything. And I was going to start this show out today for the New Year's with this whole brand new audio apparatus setup that I got and purchased. And I'll have you know that none of this fucking shit works.
Oh, come on. Really?
Well, wait a minute. Okay, here's the thing. You sent me the link, right?
Yes.
The link to the microphone. And there it was so helpful down to bottom of this thing. Of course, I'm going to have Stacy actually purchase this shit for me because I don't know how to do that. I don't purchase shit off fucking internet, right? I'll put a check in a goddamn envelope and mail it off or go to the store. But anyway, so I click on the thing. Well, it was helpful that it said people that looked at this item got this item also got this item. And well, there is a microphone stand, and not a stand, but see, one of the things, I like the freedom of the headset because, and by the way, folks, if you're just joining us for the first time, you were expecting a show. We don't do a show. I just fucking melt down mentally for about an hour and a half on this thing. So bear with us. But I like to have the headset on where I can gesticulate and wave my arms in the air and fornicate with the atmosphere while I'm talking and be free and look at things and grab things. I don't like to be tied down to like a microphone stand. So, but there was one of these. It said they also get this with that product, right? One of these goddamn stands, and not stands, but where it looks like the radio station. It's the arm that hangs down and you can wind it around, right?
Sure, the arm.
Yeah, and you can clamp it right onto your shelf or your desk or whatever. Well, I'll get that. Well, that'll be just fine. So I get that, and I get the microphone that you suggested that I get. And then I also get the windscreen, you know, the nice colored windscreen. I got a nice red to match my soothing blue walls I have here. And then the Big Daddy, the Mac Daddy headphones that you said are like putting a pillow on your head, and you can hear you, but you can hear the program. You can just hear you can just hear everything, right?
Yeah.
And so yesterday, New Year's, I sat down and I decided I'm going to put all this stuff together. And you just said, well, you just plug it in. Oh, you just plug it in. It just plugs in. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to put all this stuff together. And I'm going to surprise you with this audio quote where I'm going to sound like James Earl Jones doing the voiceover in the 10 Commandments. How good I'm going to sound here. And so the first thing, I take the stand out. I'll take the stand out of the box. When I take stand out of the box, they didn't tell me you have to put it together. And I mean, you have to put the mic fucking holder on the end of the fucking arm, and then you have to put the fucking clamp on the other end of the arm. And this ain't really hard shit, except that, you know, and the folks may not know, I'm not allowed to have power tools. I don't get this shit in my head. I can't see it. I can't get it. I don't fix things. I don't do actual labor on fixing things past driving a nail, because I will fuck it up and then throw it off my deck. Because I can do a 5-minute finish in shorthand and then rattle it off, and I see it in my head how it happens in the exact time and everybody's response, but I can't fucking figure out how to goddamn build a birdhouse, right? But also the instructions. I'm bending over for this. Hold on. I got to put this good old headset back on my head. The instructions don't help. So I'm looking at this to figure out how to put the goddamn microphone holder on the end of this arm, the radio station arm thing that turns all in different directions, and the clamp to set it on my desk on the other end. And it says here on the box, I swear to God, this is the directions. Warm prompt. WARMPROMPT. Warm prompt. Generally, the default pull positioning button is setting in screw hole with primary requirement. If you need to enhance the load bearing of suspension arm stand, you can lock the pull positioning button to different screw holes so that you can enhance the stretch strength of the outer spring, comma, then you get the effect. And it has these goddamn caveman fucking drawings of this shit that is inside this fucking box, these parts. I figured out how to put them together, but not from this. So anyway, I get the fucking arm together. And I said, well, I'll just clamp this right on the front of my fucking desk here. Well, then I realized that my desk and my cabinets and my shelves on this whole wall of my office, 10 feet high, about 22 feet long or so, whatever the fuck, is all built in. And the guy that did it got real fancy and real complicated with the trim, the molding, the goddamn clamp that clamps onto a shelf or a desk or any type of goddamn surface needs to spread out another 1/4 of an inch farther than what that it fucking does to clamp on any of my shit in the front here. So I figured out I would have to goddamn open a fucking cabinet over here next to my goddamn seat and clamp it on there and have it running around sideways. And then I couldn't figure out which way that I could turn it to clamp it any other direction, even upside down. But that didn't matter. That was negated, I'll have you know, by what I discovered next. The microphone that is often bought with this fucking mic stand don't fit in that goddamn microphone stand. It's too small. It won't fit in the goddamn stand. The microphone is too big. The stand is too small. Are you understanding the words that are coming out of my mouth? This is not compatible. So I take the microphone stand and I throw it across the fucking room. So I take a good look at the microphone. Now then, I immediately, I'll have you know, within, I would say, no more than a minute and a half, have got that goddamn windscreen on that microphone. I figured that out. Then it says, well, you need to plug your and also there is a little shitty stand, a little plastic stand that's about 4 inches high. They're like a little tripod that's weak as shit, weaker than cat's piss. That it comes with, but it'll stand up there. I figure I'll at least try and see if this works. I'll get some other kind of fucking stand. And it comes with the USB output, I guess, that would go in the front of my computer, right?
Correct.
Well, there I got that. Wow, that looks like that'll work. But then as I'm reading the book, it says, well, if you plug it in, I was going to just plug it in where this thing's plugged in, right? But it says if you plug it in, you got to have there's a preliminary setup with Mac OS X, a preliminary setup with Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7. It says things like begin at your start menu. I don't know where a fucking start menu is.
But what do you mean? That's the easiest thing on your computer to locate.
To click on anything that I don't know what it is, I lose myself and I can't get back. But it has a bunch of pictures of screens of things that I wouldn't know how to do. But I figured, but wait a minute, the headphones were the most expensive thing.
Yeah. The
headphones are going to be great. I'll just get a new mic stand and I'll pay somebody to come over here and plug this shit in for me or something, right? But these headphones are going to be super. Because as you mentioned, the headphones just plug into the microphone. So that way you're hearing your program and you're hearing all that stuff. But the microphone at the bottom has a little teeny weeny beanie little plug-in, like the 3/8 of an inch old fucking one-ear earbud thing used to have from your cassette tape recorder. It's like 3/8 of an inch. It's almost as small as Shitstain's penis. And this headset of headphones has a goddamn giant, hard, throbbing, phallic, as in Jim Cornette, we're fucking you again, giant penis-shaped plug about 2 inches fucking long that would anally rape this microphone and destroy all its inner fucking circuitry.
Did you look at the directions?
Yes.
Did you realize that the end of the headphones, that phallic thing that you're talking about there, you could just take that off and the regular output is right there? You could just pull that part right off?
Just pulling right off. Oh, never mind. No, I didn't. All right. Well, anyway, there's going to be some more talk about this upcoming off the air. Obviously, people are tired of it already. Between you and me, here coming up. That's what that was going to be.
But the point is, you've committed to upgrading the audio.
$400 worth of shit here. I'm going to use the windscreen for a clown nose. Apparently, I couldn't figure out how to work any of the other fucking part of it.
Well, at least you've committed to upgrading your audio. That's the thing that counts.
Yeah, if I don't upgrade the audio, I'm going to be committed. Last week here on the program, speaking of technical difficulties, I'll just go ahead and air all the dirty laundry. We aired it last week. It still don't smell any better. We mentioned last week how that the Midnight Express 35th anniversary picture that was on sale at JimCornette.com at Cornette's Collectibles, that we were $5 of each picture was going to the American Cancer Society in honor of Dennis Condry's victory, and we had signed them in Nashville. We put them up on sale, and everybody loved them, especially the people that could actually order them, because there was a glitch in the matrix, some kind of flub in the system, a switch we didn't flip. And if you were just ordering that picture and not ordering something else, it wouldn't take your address and blah, blah, blah when you tried to pay. So we fixed that, and we announced that last week. And since then, obviously, amazingly, imagine this. Since people have been able to actually order it and pay for it and purchase it, they've been flying off the shelves. I don't know what in the world. We've come up with a new concept. But anyway, so we appreciate that. About half of them are gone. About half of them remain. So get them while they're hot. But we did the year-end tabulations between the picture sales and the Cult of Cornette's contributions. And shit, I forgot my list, but I'll try to do this off the top of my head, because Jeremy Bagley gave $150. John Fell gave $150. David Parrish made a contribution. There were a number of other cult members that mentioned or contacted us that they did also. So I think in December we raised almost $1,000 all told for the American Cancer Society. So we appreciate that. And don't think it's because it's after Christmas that you don't need to shop at JimCornette.com, because now you can start for Valentine's Day and get the prick in your life something. And as a matter of fact, and there's less than, by the way, we mentioned this on the program also, less than 50 action figures remain between me and Figures Toy Company. We've blown through the original, what do you call them, a print? It's not a print run. It's not a magazine, or I don't know. We've blown through all they made. They were very popular. And now we're making more overseas, potentially, if Trump lets us. So, and that could be this spring or summer. So we're on the last 50 action figures till this spring or summer, if you get them while they last. And next week on the program, because I've been lazy this past week and didn't speak to people, I need to firm up some details. But next week, we're going to announce some new live event dates for 2019 and give more details on the ones that you already know about, because I'm going to have touched base with a lot of these people, and we're going to have figured some of this stuff out. But the Midnight Express 35th anniversary tour, people have been asking about C2E2. I'm finally going to – I love those folks. They're very fine folks, slow with paperwork. But I'm going to be updating that on JimCornette.com, and next week or so also. It's the holidays. We've been busy, folks. But, Brian, I said next year I was going to do around 10 live appearances, which is once a month in most of the warm months, right? And I've got 7 booked already. So I'm almost done with 2019, folks. Call me and if you have anything in the fall.
All right.
What are you doing this week? You sound a little peaked.
Me?
Yeah, you sound a little peaked. I'm wondering do you have vim and vigor? Do you poop out at parties? Do you stoop and strain? Try a bottle of Dr. Proctor's Red Rectum Rockers. They're good.
I am a bundle of energy somehow, despite the fact that I release about 45 shows a week. Let me mention this week, because we just released it, the 605 Superpodcast Holiday Star Wars, the special New Year's Star Wars, one of the most popular shows we do every year. If you have ever wanted to hear your friendly neighborhood Great Brian Last go completely off on that dirtbag Jake Roberts. This is your chance. You get to hear that. You get to hear.
Now wait a minute. Now, so, see, some people think that you're the calm one, but it only may be because if we were to both be ourselves at all times on this show, matter would destruct or whatever. So you are somewhat crusading against Jake the Snake, who has lived up to his name once again. Now we have found out, and owes Jerry Gray, who is battling very serious cancer, a lot of money that he won't pay him.
Won't pay him, won't respond to him. Jerry got taken to the hospital the other day. He's been in really bad shape, having a really rough time. The one thing that's made Jerry feel better, he has said, is coming on my show and be able to talk about old wrestling. He enjoys being able to do that. He still has his memory. This was actually the first episode he couldn't make it on the air because he wasn't well enough. So yeah, I really went off on Jake because Jake's a dirtbag, and if I ever run into him, I'm going to smack the fucking shit out of him. But Jake Roberts, if you have ever heard a story about Jake Roberts, it isn't just the past, it's the present. So you get to hear that on the show. Plus, lots of other fun things, including we play that new Kevin Von Erich commercial. Have you seen this Kevin Von Erich commercial?
I have not seen this. I was not aware that Kevin Von Erich had done a commercial. I mean, are you talking about in the modern era? I've seen the boys did Pizza Hut in Dallas. It was insane.
No, this isn't any of that.
They sold more pizza than old fucking Papa John.
This is a new commercial he just did. I'm tempted now to play you the audio because you got to hear this. It's Kevin Von Erich advertising one-way flights to Thailand. It's a
what the fuck? Wait,
hold on. Now I'm going to play this for you.
One way. Oh yeah, fire this motherfucker up. One way. Why would you want a one-way flight to anywhere?
Well, you know, Gary Glitter may want a one-way flight to Thailand, but here is Kevin Von Erich, an Israeli commercial for one-way tickets to Thailand. The audio is great, but you really got to see it, Jim. Let me play this right now. Here we go.
Hey, you there. Hey, you there. Hey, you there. The Israeli looking for an affordable trip to Thailand? Well, I'm world heavyweight champion, retired Kevin Von Erich. And when it comes to flying to Thailand, I'm the world champion at that, too. You see, I just take my iron claw hand here in my finger, and I go to the Archaea website, and I can punch in $349 for a one-way trip to Thailand. Can you beat that? No way. That's a great deal. Take your iron claw hand and your finger and go punch into that dark Archaea website. You'll see. So that's the price of a victory. So mix me up that banana latte, that sweet banana latte the way I like it. Oh, so sweet, like heaven's rainbows, because I'm coming to Thailand. Start my music.
And then it goes into music.
Oh, I love you, Kevin. But what was that sweet potato rainbow fucking line at the end? What was that? What the fuck? Crank up your sweet potato rainbow because I'm going to molly your fucking... What? But, okay, I'm gathering... Because obviously we can piece together some facts from what we do know that the Von Erichs and World Class Wrestling as a television program was on the air and incredibly popular in Israel in the 80s.
Yeah, very popular.
Yes, because while we were there, they were talking about it. And one of the reasons why we left was so we didn't have to go to fucking Israel because they were going and did. But I guess is it a thing that people in Israel fly to Thailand? I don't know my world geography. I must admit to the cult that I'd get whooped up on if you told me to find either on a map the theory of where everything is relatively is in the world. I can't find Thailand or fucking Israel. As far as are they close together? Is it a vacation thing? I don't know what the fuck's going on there, but apparently. They're using Kevin Von Erich's celebrity in Israel to promote cheap flights from Israel to Thailand because there is apparently a demand for that sort of thing. From what? Is this the airline or is it a travel agency? What?
That's not exactly clear. And let me just point out once again, it's one-way tickets. It's not round-trip vacation.
But I mean, is there somebody at the other side that will fucking send you a goddamn or sell you a ticket in case you want to come back? Do you have to stay there in that specific place forever?
I guess they just think you're going to fall so in love with the sweet banana lattes that you're just not going to want to leave. But you can hear more action like this on the brand new 605 Super Podcast New Year's Holiday Special, available at 605pod.com or wherever it is that you find your favorite podcast. All of your favorite co-hosts and guests are on the show. It's one of the best ones we've ever had. The Mothership!
Oh, you scared it. God. Bastard. Scared it. I wasn't able to quickly respond. I've lost my instincts and my reflexes. All right. Let's get some modern wrestling talk out of the way so that we can talk about cool old stuff. But everybody obviously has been asking over the last, 12 hours or whatever. It just lit everything up. All Elite Wrestling. What's going to happen? What's going to take place? Do you have any idea, my fine feathered friend, Brian Last?
Well, I know
what's your opinion?
Well, I have a lot of opinions. I know what's come out in the news, and I certainly have a lot of opinions based on that and where it could go. But it's hard to just lump them all together.
Fucking share one.
Well, I mean, it's going to be interesting what it'll be, because it could be a lot of different things. I said it on the 605 show. It could very much be the UWF in 1984, where Maeda, Takada, Sayama, Fujiwara, all those guys broke off, and they did okay in Tokyo. They didn't do any business anywhere else. The question is, how can they really grow their audience? I am one of these people that actually thinks they kind of peaked with All In, and I'm not one of their hardcore fans. Obviously, I'm not a fan of the Young Bucks' work. I'm not a fan of Cody as a wrestler. I admire some of the things they've done in terms of getting their name out there and making money, but I've found them all kind of boring for a while. I think All In was kind of like ECW barely legal. So it'll be interesting. Can they really build something now off that? Can they get enough talent? They've got money. But, in the past, Impact had money, for a while there. So it's going to be a real test there. And it's also going to be these guys left to their own creative juices. And I don't know how that's going to go. So it'll be interesting.
But here's the thing. You said they've been stale a little while, but here's the thing. There's a big audience out there that they're going to have to reach that has not seen them. So they're not stale to them. The question is, well, first of all, several things. Number one, a rule of thumb. It's always been the idea and the best thing for everybody if the money people stay away from the wrestling and the wrestling people stay away from the money, but it never works that way. And it just depends on which one influences which side more. That says a lot about the product. I'm not going to knock these guys. Because I don't know what they're going to do, so therefore I can't knock it or say it'll work. There's obviously ways they can do either. They can either fall on their ass or they can succeed. But if you have a mainstream promotion, they've got obviously the money. This guy has a ton of money. And his family and they own sports leagues and stadiums and etc. So the money is there. As much money as they want to spend is there. We know this from just fucking knowing, what's been announced. We also know that a lot of the appeal of this to the Cody Rhodes and Young Bucks and that generation fans is that the guys are in on it. And I've already mentioned he's one of the executive vice presidents. So these guys are heavily involved in the company, which is the flavor of All In that we mentioned. The guys are in on it. It's not the evil promoters subjugating the wrestling talent. So the backer has as much money as he cares to spend. The top guys are involved in it, and they do have a following, and they also have access to a lot of other top talent. Because they know the guys when their contracts are up in the WWE or who they like on the independents or whatever the fuck. So a lot of your bases are already covered. And boy, it's very easy to get excited about starting up a promotion. I've done a couple of those, so I know how easy it is to get excited. And you can look at those, but the big question marks are always then after you've got talent and you've got money, and you already have a built-in following of fans to some extent, do you have a strong platform and do you have a good product? That's what we're going to find out. If nobody else has been able to get big-time television, Impact is on, the fucking lantern slide, the Magic Lantern show on the side of people's barns in Amish country right now is their platform. But at the same time, this guy's in the fucking NFL, NBA, they own Wembley Stadium. What the fuck? They own goddamn small South American countries, apparently. So obviously he could, attract attention to, or whatever, as big a network as would want to deal with wrestling, you would think. So on whatever platform they're on, can they draw, if their station's normal primetime viewing audience is 1 million, can they do 1.5 million? Or if it's 2 million, can they do 2.5 million? Or if it ain't 500,000, it ain't that strong a fucking network, right? So the point is, can they get those people to watch that show each week at or slightly above the level of the station, to where the station will be into having more of it? And then can they get the fans with the product to pay to see more? In the old days, it was, well, buy a ticket to come see the house show. And now, whether it's house shows now, whatever they do, or whether it's a streaming service, or whether it's pay-per-view or a paper stream, or whatever the goddamn paper is, or paper in the house possibly at the start. The point is, you got to be able to make them interested enough to want to see more and spend money on the promotion in more ways than just watching a TV show. And those are the things you have to do. And what is the product going to be? Is it going to be serious pro wrestling with guys with fairly big personalities having a good athletic match over a championship, like I saw with Cody Rhodes and Nick Aldis in Nashville? Or is it even going to be even serious but high spot matches, just boom, 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 the video game stuff with the Young Bucks, where at least the athletic admiration is there? Or can they retain themselves or refrain from going too far and getting too silly or inside indie?
No.
For a big platform. Well, yeah.
That's the problem right
that
there.
didn't take long. That didn't take long.
It's indie WWE. That's the thing. If you look at All In, if you look at that show they do on YouTube and everything, it has a good following. However, it's indie WWE. It's as lame and as stupid as everything we kill the WWE for doing.
But now here's the thing. Here's the thing. If they're on a major television network or cable network or broadcast platform, if they're on a major one, that they're getting money at that level, they're probably getting paid, especially, but even if it's on a barter system, but it's a big time fucking platform, they're not going to want the show that looks like the guys that shoot it with their camera phones, the being the elite, which is a great YouTube thing and blah, blah, blah. I understand. I'm not knocking it, but it's going to be a little more serious fucking television than that.
I'm not even talking about the production quality. I'm talking about just
I'm talking about everything. They're not just going to be able to make it up as they go along. But at the same point, and here's the thing. Everybody involved, Cody's a smart business guy and a smart guy in general, and he's done very well for himself. The worst thing I can say about all of these people in this context is that there's a lack of experience in running a major league wrestling promotion on everybody's part that's involved in this, but that doesn't mean that it ain't going to take off. But that's why what I was going is, can they avoid being too indie to where the fucking guy watching X platform in goddamn Iowa says, what the fuck is this, right? Or this doesn't make any sense. Or they don't get it, or it's too much inside baseball, like the Ring of Honor Insider Club when Sinclair first took over. You had to keep a notebook to remember everybody's relationship, and some people did. But, anyway, can a mainstream promotion be edgy enough to be different than the WWE these days? Or because it would have to be in terms of athleticism, or in terms of taking it serious, or in terms of something, it has to be edgier than the WWE. And can you offend anybody these days? I know you can, but are you allowed to offend anybody? Wrestling, if you go for legitimate wrestling where you're trying to make people hate the heels and love the baby faces, then the heels have to offend someone in some fashion, because the nature of offend your sensibilities that this guy's such a prick. You don't have to go out there and, say fuckity McFuck, or, do racial fucking slurs or whatever, but you have to, as a heel, get people stirred up. I don't know if you're allowed to do that anymore. If they do have the high spot video game matches with the Bucks, they can't do a whole show or a whole program of that. They need mainstream personalities, as they all know, that will draw, that you can focus on in terms of your champion and your main fucking guy, and they should be very athletic, but the main guy in any wrestling promotion is not going to be under 6 feet tall and under 200 pounds and doing a lot of fucking high spot matches anytime in the near future without being a great fucking psychologist. Most of them are wrapped up. What flavor is their product going to have? They've got to stay away from the garbage matches are tired out with the furniture and the implements. And because now they've run people over regularly with cars, and I mean, not even talking the hardcore death matches. I'm just talking about the big promotion garbage matches. They still do them on Impact. They do them in Ring of Honor with tables and cans and shit. Do they want to look the same as every other promotion in the goddamn world, or do they want to keep away from the garbage matches? do they want to do the silly ha-ha, but then that's going to, run some people off that want to see the fucking kick-ass fucking, badass, top workers. I don't know. They got to be careful, but we don't know what they're going to do yet, so we can't say.
We don't. And I think there is absolutely room for an alternative to WWE that presents things in a radically different way. You don't get that from anyone else who's producing wrestling on TV right now. Everyone's doing WWE light, and everyone's awful at it. It's just fucking garbage wrestling out there on TV. However, there's room for an alternative. The thing is, none of these guys have ever shown any ability to take it to that direction. It's just silly indie garbage to me. And I'm sorry. I hope it is successful, because I think we do need alternatives in there, but none of these guys have ever shown the ability to be able to put on a serious product. And that's what I want. So it's already out of the gate. It's going to be content.
Well, but now, once again, with any type of real money behind it, we know Cody can be serious.
Well, with all due respect, and I have respect for everything he's done, Cody's not a good wrestler. And that's the thing, too.
But he can still be serious at it.
No, I don't think he can be serious at it. He comes across like an acting school dropout. He comes across very hokey, I think. I don't think he comes across really well.
Wrestling. I watched him have a good wrestling match. He's got it in his genes.
He's all right, and he has the worst finisher.
I'd love it for the Dream Son. But point I'm making is what they do and what they have done can be two different things. And when they get in this position and they realize what's going on, maybe they will take a swing at it and maybe they won't. But I am not going to be the one to doom and gloom them. I'll leave you to do that, but I'm not going to doom and gloom them yet. I'm going to see what they're going to do. And then the first time they do is silly, fucking, phony, stupid shit, I'm going to say, oh, fuck, here we go. And then what happens at that point, if you do have a promotion down through history doing silly, stupid, goofy, phony, exposing to business shit, then it generally leads to bad business all the way around because people get fucking sick of it, laugh at it, burn out on it, whatever the fuck. So they can either make it a place where everybody can go and work and have an alternative and expose their fucking athleticism to the world, or they can have a bad vaudeville show and fucking hurt everybody's business. We'll see.
The big interesting thing will be how big the audience is. Because if you have the money behind it and you get TV and you have the money to really properly promote the TV, because Impact got, it's easy to forget now, but years ago, Impact, TNN or whatever, Spike really invested in them. They were really ready to go for it. They went to Monday nights. They got Hogan.
Oh, God, yeah.
They really, really did try. They have the opportunity to potentially, because of the money, push it even harder than Impact ever did. The question is,
if they had done everything, by the way, except go to Monday night where they got trounced and it exposed it for what it was, if they had done that any other night of the week, they might have got somewhere at that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how big their audience is, because obviously Ring of Honor had, I guess, their best year ever, but it wasn't like they were selling out giant buildings or anything. And All In was successful, but it wasn't like All In was them by themselves. I mean, that's the thing. The idea that it was them and their money is a joke. It was Ring of Honor backing All In to get that thing off the ground. So it'll be interesting to see them left to their own resources with a big backer who apparently is a longtime wrestling fan, a longtime observer, subscriber from what I've been told. So you never know. I also wonder about too many cooks. I know Cody's an executive vice president, and I'm sure the Young Bucks will be in some sort of role like that, or at least creatively have input like that. But What happens when you have too many cooks and you don't have one guy on top of Vince McMahon? And I'm not a Vince McMahon fan at this point in time, but still, you need that one guy who has a little bit of sense to be able to say yes and no and not worry about guys getting into a hissy fit and not wanting to do anything. And that's the other thing. Are there going to be too many cooks? And are they going to incorporate some of these other goofs like Joey Ryan, who they've always associated with? Because if all of a sudden you throw him on that show.
You can't know. If let me just say this. If the dick flip is done on a television program broadcast by All Elite Wrestling, you will know that the fucking platform that they're on is pretty fucking shady. It will not be a goddamn a glory platform that you would want to be on. Because the dick flip ain't happening on fucking basic cable broadcast or whatever the fuck.
Remember, they had the penis druids on their fucking show. On their spotlight show, they thought that was a great idea.
See, maybe for once they can prove me wrong.
Maybe.
And they can do these things. That would see. I'm trying to use reverse psychology.
Maybe. And, it'll be very interesting. And I think there'll be a lot of buzz early on, and they're going to have to do a lot. But I feel like I said at the top, and you kind of reiterated what I said. I feel like they've gotten stale. So now it's going to be a test of how stale are they really. I've seen a lot of negative shit on Twitter, a lot more than I thought I would see. I think other people are feeling the same way. It'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting. And I hope it does succeed in one way or another, because I think we need alternatives. But I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't put my money into this. I'll tell you that.
Well, you won't put your money into anything.
Well, fuck. I put my money into Brian Last projects. That's what I do.
Yeah, I've heard it said about you, you're the last person to spend your money. I've heard it said that way.
Well, that's true.
All right. Anyway, I want to test your knowledge here. I said one of the things I did over the holiday week was I straightened up the office, and I've straightened up some of my cassette tapes that I used to listen to in the car on trips, such as all the way until this last vehicle I got that didn't have a fucking cassette player. And then I've had them in my office since then. But I want to read because these are all custom tapes, I made them all in the 80s and just kept them for 5 years. Actually, oh my God, I made this one in the 70s. Yeah, but anyway, because I didn't want to just listen to the whole goddamn album. I wanted the hits, right? I programmed my own shit. Me and Bolin a lot of times and even when we were very young in the mid 70s, what we would do is we would go in halves on the fucking record album, and we'd buy it, and then he would tape it, and I'd take it home, and if I paid $1 more, or sometimes he'd get it back, and then he'd draw a little fucking a pencil mark on one of the tracks and take it back down to the drugstore where he got it and told him that it skipped. And since they didn't have another copy, they'd have to give him his money back after we'd already recorded it. But anyway, I had some of these cassette tapes. I don't want to play Name That Tune because it's the opposite of what I'm trying to do here. I will name the song and see if you can name the artist and or the year or the album or anything else about these particular tunes that are among my favorite songs of all time that I've listened to for 30 and 35 years and more on these classic handmade cassette tapes. Are you up for this challenge?
I don't know. You have very questionable taste in music, so I don't know.
Oh, come on now. You're shitting on the whole goddamn thing right before we can get started.
All right, let's give it a shot.
One of my first tape, one of my classic rock favorites, really high energy, an incredible playlist. The first cut on the first side, Ghost Riders in the Sky.
Well, that's one of your favorites. You've always talked about that.
Yes. The Outlaws.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And you know nothing else about it.
No, because it's not my thing.
Yeah. Oh, for heaven's sake. Followed up with Never Been Any Reason.
I don't know.
Oh, certainly to God. Certainly to God. Never Been Any Reason. Head East. Off the Flat as a Pancake album, 1973. Save my life, I'm going down for the last time.
Must be a Southern thing.
Never Been Any Reason.
No, well, there hasn't been any reason for me to listen to that.
One of the greatest fucking this guitar fucking deal in the middle with the synthesizer and the whole goddamn bridge of the song. Oh my God, it's insane. Next, The Immigrant Song.
Yes, of course I know that. Led Zeppelin, Bruiser Birdie's theme song.
Fantasy.
Not sure.
Oh, come on.
Fantasy?
Fantasy.
I don't know.
Well, I don't either. Because I can't remember. This shouldn't be Aldo Nova's Fantasy. But would it be Bad Company's Rock and Roll Fantasy? And I shorthanded it. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't Fear the Reaper.
Oh, Blue Oyster Cult, Long Island. All right.
There you go. Let It Ride.
Let It Ride. Good song.
Bahubai.
Fuck. What'd you say?
Why the inimitable, so many group names going through my head, you don't know it. Let It Ride, 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 let it ride.
Yeah, I know the song. I don't know the band.
Bachman Turner Overdrive, you fucking Jesus Christ.
I never liked Bachman Turner Overdrive. I kind of think they suck.
Magic Man and Dreamboat Annie.
Okay, boy, you have the worst.
And Crazy on You, obviously.
Obviously all heart, yeah.
Fire Lake.
I don't know Fire Lake.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Who's going to ride that chrome three-wheeler? Who's going to make that first mistake? Who's going to wear gypsy leather all the way to Fire Lake? Who's going to break the news about Uncle Joe? You remember Uncle Joe? He was the one afraid to cut the cake. Who's going to take that long shot gamble all the way to Fire Lake? Bob Seger's most overlooked and forgotten single. What a fucking classic.
Hey, let me ask you one. I got one of my tapes here. Let me ask you one. You ask one, I'll ask one. Richie Dagger's Crime.
What the fuck?
Richie Dagger's Crime.
Is that a song, a fucking band, or a goddamn headline out of the newspaper?
It's a song by the Germs.
Well, and they need some fucking antimicrobial shit, fucking, and they wouldn't have that stuff, and especially if places that stay moist. And finishing after Fire Lake, Love is Like Oxygen.
I don't know. I know Love is like a heat wave.
Oh no, come on. Yeah, you're the fucking edgy punk rock. Love is like oxygen, sweet. Love is like oxygen. You get too much, you get too high. Not enough and you're going to die. Love makes you high, pal.
Yeah, I was listening to much different stuff.
Sweet. On the other side of this classic cassette.
This is awful.
Turn the Page.
I wish we would.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Once again, Bob Seger, The Wrestler's Anthem. Turn the Page.
What do you mean The Wrestler's Anthem?
Are you completely out of your rabbit ass mind? Especially if I know, and once again, everybody likes The Stranger in Town era of Bob Seger. I did mention Fire Lake, which was overlooked a few years later, but Turn the Page, the live performance, which was on was it 9 Tonight or whatever the live album was, my guy, or the Bob Seger and Silver Bullet Band live. Anyway, Turn the Page, the live version, it's like fucking 6-7 minutes long, is the anthem that every wrestler would play in the car after the fucking show. It was the wrestler's anthem. You look up the fucking lyrics. It's the wrestling business. And it was just universally recognized as being for the boys, even though it was obviously about the music business.
All right, let me ask you another one. Protect Your Neck.
Oh, for God's sake. Following Turn the Page.
Wu-Tang Clan, by the way.
Yeah. I'm sure. Well, I'm not in favor of the Klan now. They've done a lot of bad Back in Black.
Of course I know Back. What year? I thought you said this was mid-70s. This is a different...
Well, no, I made this next one I'm going to run by obviously quicker because you won't know any of this shit. Is this 70s? This is like early 80s. This is like about 79, 80, 81.
Well, Back in Black is, yeah.
Back in Black, because then followed by In the Dark. Billy Squier.
Yeah, I'm not a big Billy Squier fan.
Oh, but this was, once again, wonderful lyrics, but music had wonderful energy. It's a very overlooked fucking track. Followed by Renegade. The jig is up. The news is out. Sticks. Followed by Too Much Time on My Hands.
I would say.
Oh, God. I'm sitting on this bar stool talking like a damn fool, got the 12 o'clock news blues, and I've given up hope over the afternoon soaps and a bottle of cold brew. Is it any wonder I'm not the president? Is it any wonder I'm not in jail? Is it any wonder, Brian Last, I got too much time on my hands. It's ticking away at my sanity. I've got too much time on my hands. It's hard to believe such a calamity.
What about Chinese rock?
Oh, blow me. Burning for You. Back to Blue Oyster.
BOC, yeah.
Yes, followed by, and you got to know this, Sign of the Gypsy Queen.
I don't know that.
Oh, yeah. April Wine. Sign of the Gypsy Queen by April Wine. Not only did the picture sleeve for the 45 have a woman with no bra on with prominent nipples and a white fucking top, and that was just great for 1979, but also Sign of the Gypsy Queen, the fucking guitar, boom, and Trouble's Coming Without Control, No One's Staying, It's Gotta Roll, Hurricane at the very least, in the words of the Gypsy Queen.
For fuck's sake. What about Fake Contest? Do you know Fake Contest?
Yeah, I've been in a bunch of them.
The Minutemen.
Yeah. 867-5309, Jenny.
That I know. Tommy Two-Tone.
Tommy Two-Tone.
His only hit.
Followed by, and it's a very underrated track by REO Speedwagon, the live recording of Keep Pushing On.
They are the worst.
Pushing.
Of all the bands you've named so far, REO Speedwagon are the worst.
I'm telling, that song had tremendous energy. I don't care if fucking Mannheim von Clamp and his fucking crotch rot band did the song. It's a great energy. I found one of my funk tapes.
All right.
Because we had mentioned the funk earlier with Love Gun and everything weeks ago. And just real quick, see if you can identify these classic tunes. Shake Your Body Down to the Ground.
Of course, the Jacksons.
The Jacksons. You and I.
You and I by Rick James.
Rick James, bitch. Followed, and see, these were all the disco singles. I got the fucking 12-inch fucking disco single extended remixes of these things. So, and followed by High on Your Love, Rick James. It goes like fucking 12 minutes. It just never, and they've got fucking bird calls and goddamn whistles and fucking ukuleles, tambourines, all kinds of shit in the middle of this thing. It's fucking insane. But, High on Your Love was one of his underrated radio hits because a lot of people didn't play it because of the questionable nature of the drug scene at the time. I'm high, and there's no doubt. It feels so good. I'm so far out. Baby, baby, baby. Girl, you know you turn me on. But anyway, what was the last? Wait a minute. I'm high, too high to cope. I'm high on love, ain't had no dope, no. But anyway, followed by One Nation Under a Groove.
That's a classic.
By who?
One Nation Under a Groove? Oh, fuck.
Yes.
Funkadelic.
Yeah, very good. I was going to disown you there.
Nah.
Followed by Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and back to Flashlight. Who did Flashlight?
I'm not sure.
Oh, come on. You were right there a minute ago. Try to nudge.
Funkadelic. I don't know.
Parliament.
Oh, okay.
The twin band of Funkadelic that George Clinton also perpetrated with Bootsy Collins, and basically the same cast, but it was heavier on fucking. They were heavier. Funkadelic was heavier on horns, were they not? Or was it the other way around? No, Parliament.
Other way around.
Other way around. Yes.
Yeah.
Flashlight, red light, neon light, stoplight. I just can't find that thing. Anyway, on the other side of this classic tape, Oops Upside Your Head. Remember that? That was a disco hit.
I don't know that.
Upside your head. Is it Oops Upside Your Head? Everybody go.
You got anything from Maggot Brain on there?
Wait, actually, no, but I have that single, I think. Don't Let Go. Come on, you got to remember this one.
I don't know.
Who's our favorite bald-headed soul star that co-starred on South Park?
Oh, Isaac Hayes.
Isaac Hayes, Don't Let Go. It was his disco period. It lasted about 6.5 weeks.
I'm not a big disco fan.
Followed by more of Rick James, Love Gun, and Mary Jane. I'll give you those. Do you love me, Mary Jane? Do you? Now, do you think you love me, Mary Jane? Don't you play no games? Then, testing your knowledge here, It's All the Way Live. Who did that song?
Oh, Ric Flair. That's what he said about Precious.
God damn it.
Precious is all the way live.
Well, this is who he was ripping off. It's all the way live. It's all the way live.
I don't know.
Lakeside, an incredibly popular soul group, followed with Take Your Time, Do It Right. Don't tell me you don't remember. You do not remember. Take your time, do it right. We can do it, baby. Do it tonight. The SOS band. That girl was so hot. What was her name? I can't remember her name. Oh, my God. She was molten lava and had that voice.
What you're doing right now is basically in your own way explaining exactly why rap happened, was to stomp all this out.
Oh, for God's sake. And followed up with Master Blaster on Stevie Wonder off of that.
There you go. That's a good one. There you go.
I will not even go through my complete list of, well, maybe I might, but my favorite Southern rock tape, just since we're on the subject. All I can do is write about it. Give Me Back My Bullets and That Smell by Skinner, obviously. Yeah. Fire on the Mountain. Come on, you got to know
Charlie Daniels Band. Grateful Dead actually did Fire on the Mountain. That's the version I like.
The Marshall Tucker Band.
Fuck them. The Grateful Dead.
You were a Smoky Mountain fan. Didn't even know he did Fire on the Mountain.
I like Jessica better when you play
Blue Sky. Jessica's on the other side of this, by the way.
Blue Sky, Allman Brothers. Okay.
Okay. South's going to do it again.
Charlie Daniels.
Uneasy Rider.
This really is like the entire Smoky Mountain playlist right here on this tape.
Who did Uneasy Rider?
Not sure.
It was Charlie Daniels. Oh, it was his first hit.
Okay.
For fuck's sake. Followed by Carolina, which is a Charlie Daniels album cut, but it's very pretty lyrically. And then Tuesday's Gone by Skinner. And on the following side, the B side, I should say, a double header from a particular album, Uncle Elijah and Lord Have Mercy on My Soul. Do you remember that obscure yet meaningful group?
No.
In the Southern rock pantheon, Black Oak, Arkansas.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And now you're humoring me now.
Yeah. No, this is why Stan took control of the radio when he joined the Express.
No. Black Oak, Arkansas was this badass group from the town of Black Oak, Arkansas. Jim Dandy Mangrum. Remember, go Jim Dandy, go. That was another one of their hits. They made goddamn the Allman Brothers look like choir boys. These were the drugged outest, long-hairedest, fucking tooth-missingest, hillbilliest, backwoods, Arkansas pig fucking looking fucking people. And this Cousin Ruby was this wild-ass fucking backup singer they had that was in these skin-tight outfits and just shook her tits and her ass everywhere with this big white girl afro she had. And this was just fucking insanity, right? And Uncle Elijah is a song about his fucking 105-year-old uncle that once had the experience of meeting the goddamn devil, Satan himself, and being snatched at in his backyard after a night of drinking, gambling, and carousing, but with the goddamnedest fucking banjo and hard rock, Southern rock guitar shit that's ever been done. And then Lord Have Mercy on My Soul is another quasi fucking religious thing. It's like 10 minutes long. And this fucking band of misfits and perpetrators later on finds God, and Jim Dandy Mangrum starts doing the fucking tour of all of the religious TV shows all over the South, praising the Lord and talking about how they used to be a bunch of fucking drugged out hillbillies. Fascinating fucking group, Black Oak, Arkansas. Can't believe you're not familiar with their work.
What about Paid in Full? Do you know who did Paid in Full?
I'm not even trying at this point.
Eric B. and Rakim.
Green Grass and High Tides, the Outlaws, of course. Yeah. I have spread the greatness of this around the territory with the program, and also There Goes Another Love Song. Followed up by, you ought to know this one, Keep Your Hands to Yourself.
I've never heard that before, and I don't know what the song is.
A late burst of Southern rock by the Georgia Satellites.
Ooh, I never liked them. Oh, they're awful.
Keep Your Hands to Yourself.
Oh, I hate that song, and I hate that band. I know that song.
I stole that line. I stole a couple of lines out of that song for Big Bubba on promos. And later on, Dan Baird, the lead singer, split off, was produced and was on Rick Rubin's music label and released one fairly hit single that I liked called I Love You, Period.
And it was about his wife's time of the month.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Now you've taken it into the gutter. Followed by fucking Jessica was the song after that, followed by Don't Ask Me No Questions and Saturday Night Special, because we're back to Skinnerd, because why wouldn't you be to finish things out? And that's pretty much, those are fine sets there.
No Freebird, because of the length, or just not one of your favorites?
No, Freebird was on the all Skinnerd tape, but if I'm going to do a fucking compilation, there's a number of Skinnerd songs that I like better than Freebird, so that would be more on the fucking all Skinnerd, just like the all Floyd or the all Zeppelin or the all fucking Stones or whatever, rather than the compilations that vary things up, especially for shorter trips.
Yeah, I don't know. When I was making comp tapes, it was definitely not this stuff.
Oh, for heaven's sake, this stuff, you're so dismissive of this fucking...
I didn't know you were so into disco.
I love disco.
Come on.
but well, not just the fucking generic disco, but the fucking disco with some oomph with it, and some of the you cannot deny that some of the people producing disco were some of the most talented either producers or musicians, or in a couple cases vocalists, in the music business.
No, that is true. Some of those bass lines are pretty sick. That is true.
My God, I mean, and
Giorgio Moroder,
Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and all those people, fucking everybody was appropriating shit but the best artists behind, usually in production rather than live performance, were involved in disco.
Paranoid Android. Who did Paranoid Android?
Dr. Smith and the fucking Lost in Space band.
That's correct.
Well, there you go. All right, I got anyway, you wouldn't put my music over. I love those tapes. Well, I've had many a pleasant hour driving up and down the roads cussing people listening to those songs. Anyway, I got a piece of wrestling history that has been answered or revealed or whatever, as I've teased at the top of the program.
Yeah, what is this?
And you don't even know what this is either.
Yeah.
I had, the Midnight Express book, we've talked about what a collector's item it is. But the Houston, Texas Last Stampede, Midnight Express versus Bill Watts and Junkyard Dog, or Stagger Lee, in Houston at the Sam Houston Coliseum is listed. I always had in my records, and I remember it plain as day, because Paul Bosch was always proud to come in and tell you the house in Houston. Right? It may not have been the whole house, but he was always proud to tell you what he wanted. I mean, Bruce does intimate that there was an FIA fund, fuck him in the ass, where some costs were taken off the top. But, but Paul was also a very fair payoff man and noted as being one of the better ones in the business. So anyway, and so I knew that the house was $102,000. And that's what he reported to the commission, et cetera. And we had asked that night because it was sold out and they turned people away. We'd been asking around because we were thrilled, as I'll get to in a minute. And he had said, we got 12,000 people. Well, that's not really exact, right? And the cops had told us at the time, because we asked them, because I'll tell you why in a second, how many people couldn't get in. And they had told us at the time, it was probably fucking around 2,000. That couldn't get in somewhere. Maybe it was closer to the 1,000 side. Maybe it was more than 2,000, but somewhere around that couldn't get in. So anyway, that's what we knew. But somebody just sent me completely out of the blue, and I would give you his name, but he wrote in such weird ink, and it wasn't the best writing in the world, that I couldn't exactly get his name. But he sent me the clipping from the Houston newspaper for the day after the show. And I don't know what the name of the paper is because it's not on here. It's just the clipping. But the official attendance of the Last Stampede event at Sam Houston Coliseum in April 1984, Cowboy Bill Watts, the headline is 12,284 watch wrestling card at the Coliseum. Cowboy Bill Watts and Stagger Lee defeated the Midnight Express in the final event of a wrestling card before 12,284, the largest crowd ever to see wrestling at Sam Houston Coliseum. And this is a very neat little clipping, but now we know the answer to that question. How many people were at the Last Stampede in Houston, which means that it is number 3 on the last Stampede list because we had 23,000 something in the Superdome and just under 13,000 in the Myriad in Oklahoma City. So Houston would claim the number 3 spot. But because of the fact that at that point, there had never been a larger wrestling crowd in the city of Houston to see wrestling there at that point at the Sam Houston Coliseum, we had the record at that time, is what I'm trying to say to you.
And that's only one of the 2 Last Stampede matches that exist on tape, right? That's the one the WWE put on their DVD.
Yeah, well, I've got New Orleans, I've got that one, and there's another one from somewhere that I got to dig up.
Yeah, I have the Superdome one, and I know I sent you that many years ago.
Yes.
But that's about it. Hey, let me ask you a quick trivia question. Paul Bosch, Peter Burkholz, Rick Rubin, and the great Brian Last, what do they all have in common?
I have no earthly idea.
They're all from Long Beach, New York, 11561.
I should have figured you would top my announcement. I should have sensed it coming. As a matter of fact, let you said that first, where I could give myself the big buildup. But I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. But here's the reason. The reason why, getting that clipping, because I remember that night. Obviously, the match and the payoff and whole 9 yards, but. When we would, Houston was a 250-mile drive from Alexandria, Louisiana, where we were all living. And the first 100 miles or whatever down to Lake Charles was 2-lane road. So we would have to leave for Houston to get there, make sure we were there by 7 o'clock was time we were supposed to be there. We'd always try to be a half an hour or even 20 minutes early. So to make sure we were there around 6:30, we would have to leave home by 1 o'clock at the latest, sometimes earlier, and we would know that we would not be back. It would take 5.5 hours, so we'd be back somewhere 4:35 in the morning, right? And so it was a long trip, but we knew it was always a good payoff. But when we got into town off the interstate, the Sam Houston Coliseum that had been there for so long, it was like a huge, the old-fashioned buildings that it wasn't right in between a couple of skyscrapers, but it was in downtown. So you'd come in on the interstate and get off and go right into the downtown area, and you'd come up to that big, huge building on your left-hand side. You'd go all the way past the front doors, and you would turn left, and you'd go all the way down that street like a city block is how big this fucking thing was. And you were kind of going down a hill too. And then you would turn left and go around behind the building. And that's where they had place for wrestlers to park. You didn't have to park with the fans. They couldn't fucking knife your tires and all that shit and beat you up. Right. So when we come off the interstate and are coming down in front of the Sam Houston Coliseum, and we look over to the left, the first thing we see is people out the fucking door. And I seem to remember there were steps. If there wasn't steps, I apologize. But down the steps, but down the sidewalk and to the side. And when we got to the corner, and of course we didn't particularly want to be seen because we had heat, so we're kind of ducking down. But it's in downtown Houston. This was an impressive sight. They're 2 and 4 abreast down the stairs, down the sidewalk. When we turned left, the city block down that entire block lined up trying to get in this fucking thing. And when we turned left and went around behind, almost all the fucking spots were blocked to where we could even get into the goddamn wrestler parking and go in the back door. And we wormed our way in. And it was a goddamn madhouse. And I'd never seen anything like that. And I'm thinking, here, I'm in the back seat. I think Dennis was probably driving. I'm in the back seat, and we're seeing that. And I'm thinking 3 months before that, I was the lowest paid, most unimportant guy on the Memphis wrestling roster as the assistant spot show manager to Jimmy Hart, making $280 a week. And 3 months later, I'm about to main event the all-time record house in Houston. I'm going to make $2,000 in one night, which is almost $5,000 a day. And if Paul Bosch had still been doing the payoffs instead of Watts, it would have been $5,000 that night. And that's just one of the big shows that we're going to do that week in that territory that's going to draw more than 10,000 people. So needless to say, I was shickled titless to be there. But it made me realize when I was thinking about that, I'm going to tell you about a psychology lesson, and it's just for what it's worth, and you can absorb from this or you cannot. But that's, even though I'd been in the business 18 months, like that's a long time, but the trip to Louisiana is when I started getting a lesson in psychology, not only from Watts and the way he promoted things, but also from riding the car with Bobby and Dennis, especially Dennis Condrey. Because Bobby was the kind of guy that would not extol or expound at length on the virtues or whatever, or philosophies of himself or different people. Bobby would tell funny stories, kind of funny, simple stories about maybe how somebody tried to do a move and it looked kind of stupid, or talk about guys that got over with him and how good they were. But you would kind of learn things from Bobby, like, or Cornette doesn't make any sense to me when he went ahead and took that bump anyway, or shit like that. And you'd learn from Bobby. He'd call attention to shit. But Dennis would talk at length because we were in these cars fucking 10 and 12 hours a day and longer in a lot of cases. And from the time that we got there, in Memphis was laid back, especially at my level, just being underneath, or even at the level that Bobby and Dennis were on the card. But then Watts comes in and handpicks not only us, not only Bobby and Dennis, to be a team that they weren't even teaming, as we've talked about. Bobby was a babyface, Dennis was a heel with a different partner. Picks me to manage them, picks our perfect tag team opponents, handpicks the best guy to be our booker, Bill Dundee, that not only knew all of us, but knew exactly how to book Southern-style tag team wrestling, and especially work under Watts' supervision, which you had to be able to do. So we've heard we've got this spot, and we have got the chance to get – he's basically said, here, you're the top heel team in my territory. Here's your best opponents. And here's a booker that knows how to feature you guys. If you get over, you'll make $100,000 a year, or this year. And then we had the ball, so we had to carry it. So it wasn't like in Memphis where we just tell funny stories in the car. We would talk about the matches and business. And Dennis would explain the way he thought about things. And a lot of it was the psychology of the Midnight Express matches. And we were all business in terms of we tried never to be fined, never to be late. And even though we told plenty of bullshit stories, we talked a lot of both on the way to the town and especially the way back. The way back, a lot of times we dissect what didn't work or whatever. But the psychology that Dennis used was pretty much the Southern tag team psychology, and he'd had a lot of success with it because he and Phil had been featured more than Bobby had, and certainly more than I had. That you do have comedy in your matches, but it's not comedy that mocks. And help me if I'm not able to say this right, Brian, because people don't seem to be able to get it. Some comedy mocks the business, or mocks parts of it, maybe parts that you don't necessarily want to be mocked because it exposes weak spots in the business. But comedy in wrestling that works is when it's applied in the proper way to make the heel the butt of the joke, to get the babyface over, to make the babyface seem more clever or more resourceful because he took the piss out of this asshole that you don't like, that says or does horrible things. And the heel can never be going along with it or even ho-hum about it or cooperating with it especially. The heel always has to be pissed off and at his wit's end about it. This is what makes the comedy work within the aspect of a goddamn – it's the same thing as in a UFC fight. If John Jones, especially now with the heat he's got, if he went out and did some of that goddamn bird dogging and hot dogging like Anderson Silva used to do, and that he's done plenty of, and somebody just kicked him and knocked every tooth in his mouth out and just his head like a rock'em sock'em robot, colder than a banker's heart, people would laugh, wouldn't they?
I would.
But that doesn't mean that it was fake. That doesn't mean it's silly. It wouldn't devalue the contest. So anyway, that's what I realized, is that I was lucky to get this education from listening to the guys not only talking about what not to do, but to what to do, but what not to do in some situations. And the tag team philosophy that we used, it was started with Dennis because he'd had the most success of all of us. You have those Southern tag team matches, or Southern style tag team matches, where the baby faces always dominate at the start. And they show that they're more resourceful. They can outsmart. They can out-wrestle. They're too good. They foil the heels. Then somehow the heels get so fed up, they do the heat spot, which is a cheat, a double team, a manager interference, but a pull the rug out from under the people right as the baby faces are really cooking and at their height. Boom, you cut them off. Pull the rug out and boom, and ground them, and then you get vicious. And you take out the animosity of the embarrassment they've just caused you. Even if it's a heated program now, it's especially more time to be a fresh heat because they've just embarrassed you, made you look bad in front of a bunch of people. And that's where you get vicious. And then, as Dennis would say, you get more heat because you made them laugh, and then you made them even madder because you made them quit laughing. And all of a sudden, your fucking incompetent ass isn't slipping on a banana peel. Now it's grinding your fucking boy's face in the mat. And then you want to get behind, and the vicious heat, but with hope spots where the baby face never dies, keeps coming back, but always gets cut off before the people quite blow. Until you get the big major malfunction where the heels cross up some kind of way, miss their big finish move, run into each other, something fucking happens, get too overconfident. Then a surprise hot tag, big bumps on the fucking comeback. If it's a big show, do a few false finishes. If a lot of house shows, there'd be one false finish and we'd break into our deal and go because by then they're there, right? And you do the finish or the fuck or the pin or whatever the fuck it is, boom, and you try to get out and get back while the people are still on their feet. And that was the flavor that we usually followed. But Dennis was smart enough to break it down further in that I see a lot of guys, not only do they just want to do something funny for the aspect of being funny instead of something funny in the overall framework of something like that, but they also want to do the same matches and the same moves that they normally do with everybody they work with, or they want to let that guy do all of his moves to them. And there's another, and I got to be honest, Bobby would have been the same way because Bobby was a bumping fucking machine. He was a greyhound back then. He'd take fucking backdrops if you looked at him crooked, right? And he loved to have good matches and give people action. But once again, Dennis did the same thing that a lot of veterans did. This is not earth-shaking or invented by him, but he did it for our team. But you had a match based on the level of the perception that the fans had for your opponent. We always tried to have good matches, even if it was just a squash match on TV, like the TBS matches where we just dominate, but we tried to make it halfway entertaining and get heat off of it. But in a place like Louisiana where Watts, he wouldn't have tolerated any foolishness on his television, even if we were beating shit out of the guys. It wasn't going to be funny there. It was a formula. If you had job guys, you took most of the match and then you beat them flat with your finish. And, you know, depending on what they looked like or where they were, you might give them a little something. You didn't want to just make it drab. But if they were seen as pretty much just flat job guys that never won, maybe you'd take a hip toss. Or maybe they'd get a couple of headlocks on you, right? A couple of hip tosses. Otherwise, you'd goozle them, as Dennis used to say. If it was a guy that was being used underneath, but he had a little bit more talent, could go a little bit more like George South, then you maybe give him a little more. If it was a guy that was on the roster full time, but in the underneath cards, but people were starting to get behind him a little bit, and his shit looked good, and he looked competent, then he would get some offense before you grounded him and beat him up or beat the other partner or whatever. But then finally, the main event baby faces, you'd be a ping pong ball. And I mean, it was to the difference in Dennis had it down to such an art because his body language and his ring positioning was so good for that. And Bobby could adapt to anything. you'll notice that if we were in a match that was just on the card our first month in the territory, where we were underneath with George Weingroff and Lanny Poffo, or some of the other guys, Mike Jackson, some of the other guys that were underneath, Rick Rude, who was just starting out, the guys on the card, if they'd punched Dennis in the side of the head, he wouldn't maybe take a bump. He'd register and swing his head, and he'd go down to a knee, or he'd stagger to the ropes. But it would take a guy full-time on the roster and you'd being used in a position for him to take a bump from a punch. It was different levels. And a lot of guys now don't understand that you should, for your own preservation, especially if you're being given a push, if you're being given the ball to run with it, if your promoter has said, I'm going to make you my top attraction in this given field, team or single or heel or babyface, whatever, and you've got to get over, then you have to go out there and you have to work with guys that are based on the level of their perception in front of the fans, not the level of the perception of the quality of their work. They can be the best worker in the world, but you pretty much need to beat them up if nobody has any confidence in them because of the way they're being used in that environment. It's like when Michael Elgin wanted to do spots in Ring of Honor with Grizzly Redwood. Elgin's supposed to be a fucking beast. Grizzly Redwood's kicking the shit out of him. I was asking Delirious, who the fuck are we pushing? Just because they can do these things doesn't mean they should be allowed to until they have that standing in the eyes of the fans. That's another wrestling psychology lesson. And I will actually leave them with one more comedy thing, a comedy of example. This can be funny and silly even without making wrestling look phony. I saw Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey do this spot for the first time just on the fly. They just made it up. I'll explain how in a second. And then when it got over so good, because it got such a tremendous pop from the people, they started doing it regularly every night as we went around the different shows. But it always looked like they had just done it accidentally for the first time, if that makes any sense. There was no pre-planning or setup to this thing. It was all literally done at a high rate of speed, but it appeared accidental. And actually, the first time, the opponent didn't even know what was going to go on. Dennis called it, and I'll tell you how. It was Ricky Morton. Dennis locks up with Ricky and spins him, rakes his eyes, and spins him around where Bobby, standing on the apron, can grab Ricky's arms from behind so that Dennis can run and hit the ropes and come with a big boot. So when he rakes Ricky's eyes, he spins him around, Bobby grabs him, and Dennis just says, move. That tells both Bobby and Ricky that Ricky's going to move, right? Dennis goes and hits the ropes, comes flying in with his big boot to the gut. Ricky moves, and Dennis puts his foot through the second and third rope, through Bobby's midsection. Bobby sells it by bending over and fucking spitting. And Dennis's leg is stuck in the goddamn ropes for a second. And right as fucking Dennis gets his fucking leg free, Ricky, of course, being a good baby face, has spun around and squared up with his fist to see what the heel's going to do next. And Dennis gets his leg out and balls his fist up and turns around like he's going to do something and just tells Ricky, nail me. And Ricky nails him, and he flies backwards because there's Bobby still leaning over the top rope. And he rams into Bobby, the back of Dennis's head to the front of Bobby's head, and Dennis immediately flies face forward to the floor like a billiard shot, and Bobby fucking flies off the apron to the fucking floor. And I wave my arms in the air and scream like a chicken, and the people laugh and pop because, oh my God, did you see those guys? They fucked up. It looked like a trick shot in a pool game. But they just did it because they were good performers and they knew what to fucking do and they knew how to call shit on, and react to shit on the fly. And then once it got over, then they added it in and would do it on a more regular basis. But even though the people laughed like the punchline of a goddamn George Carlin HBO special, nothing about it was phony. We didn't like it. We weren't cooperating with it. It appeared accidental, and it was a goddamn way for the Rock and Roll Express to show their superiority over us in terms of wrestling. That's comedy in wrestling. It can be funny as fuck. Just don't cooperate. Don't make the wrong people the butt of jokes. And don't make it so fucking stupid and contrived. Have I said this in the proper fashion?
I believe so. You know, I do want to ask you about something because it goes into this time period. I recently watched from Houston the Express versus TA and Wrestling 2. And the crowd is just going apeshit. But the thing that got me was thinking about the fact that, like you said, just a few months earlier, you were in Memphis, and you seem so much more confident. You almost seem like a completely different manager there at ringside than you were in Memphis. Did you get confidence right away when you got to Mid-South and you knew you were being put in this role? Or how long did it take you to get used to being that number one manager in the territory?
Well, I just overnight, I didn't show up and just, I can do this now. But honestly, by that point in time of the Houston match I think was late January. We'd been there full time since Christmas. What Watts had done was a classic build job. He brought us in to do television for 6 weeks before they ever saw us, and we just beat people on TV every week. And then he put us for the first month, so it was really twice around all the major towns on the underneath card against tag teams of baby faces that we could just beat. And not only did he not call this at the finish, but Dennis always made sure to tell me another thing: don't interfere. I'd never interfere in a TV match against job guys, because if I have to interfere against job guys, why should we all be able to beat the main event guys? And I wouldn't even interfere in matches with underneath talent at the house shows, whereas in Memphis, it's kind of willy-nilly with the managers. They just do whatever. Or I'd go out 6 times a night on a spot show, and it made me learn, but it didn't keep any heat on me. It was just I was the guy passing gimmicks in. But with a spot like this, no, I didn't even interfere in the matches at the house show matches unless it was a main event tag team. And then whether it was the manager distraction or interference or whatever the case, then it meant something. But to answer your question, after the first couple of weeks, when we saw the reaction, because we could see the lay of the land, and there was some talented guys there, but there wasn't anybody really, just being honest, that was exciting in the ring as Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey. Nobody was doing promos like me, even though, with all due respect, JYD's promos weren't like mine, but he was still fucking over. And Hacksaw Duggan was pretty goddamn good. Some of those guys were over. But also the matches we could have with the Rock and Roll, who you could tell the people were just creaming over the first time they saw them, we could see it was there. And so we were careful to make sure we maximized the heat that we got, and we didn't fuck up, and we didn't look too vulnerable. At the same time, we were serious, straight down the bone as much as we could be, because we knew that's what Watts wanted. I've told that story one time. Jim Ross has told it. When I just got there from Memphis, and I was used to seeing Lawler just, verbally eat the lunch of Lance Russell, right? So I did the same thing to Jim Ross. In this promo one time, his suit and his clothes and his hair and his fucking accent, and it was just hilarious. And Watts let me do the whole thing. He said, all right, now, unless you think that we're going to be booking this match between you and Jim Ross anywhere in these arenas in the near future, do it over and do it right this fucking time. Talk about your opponent. Okay, yes, sir. Shit like that. So, but I saw it working. I saw what the houses were like when we went to these towns. We were the opening match or the second match or whatever. And then I see a couple weeks later when we moved up the card, and then I see our first matches with Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA for the belts off the angle, doubling the house in Houston or tripling the house in Little Rock or whatever the fuck. And we're like, okay. And then I was determined I was going to make somebody fucking attempt to assassinate me, or at least buy a ticket to fucking try something like that. And I was scared a lot, but I was more scared of getting killed than I was scared of fucking up after a while, because with Bobby and Dennis, it was a whole lot easier than it was with any other team or performer. And I got a little bit of confidence at that point that what I was doing was working.
So you get the tennis racket when you go to Mid-South. How long was it before you first used it?
Our fucking third time in Baton Rouge. That would have been about 3 weeks in. I think probably the first time that we actually had a main event match off the angle with 2 and TA in Baton Rouge, I believe, would have been the first night I used it. Oh, you mean against the fans? I'm talking, or against the boys?
I meant in a wrestling match.
Oh we've beaten these motherfuckers in Baton Rouge on the way back to the locker room, senseless with that fucking thing. About we hadn't been there 3 weeks, but it would have been the first run with 2 and TA. I think Magnum TA was probably the first person I ever hit with that racket. And I hadn't caught on. We hadn't caught on early on that you could smack it flat like a chop, and it would make that big noise. So we were trying to work and hit people with the frame, and that was leading to fucking taters, and it didn't sound as good. So when I picked up on the whack, I split. I think Magnum, he has a long beard, but he's probably still got a scar on his chin, where we had him down, and we had 2 blinded some kind of way, and I took the butt end of the racket and jumped up. I used to be able to do this before I destroyed my knees. I jumped as far up as I could in the air and came down with my knees like I'd seen Jimmy Hart do with his cane in Memphis. But apparently Magnum had not been a loyal follower of Jimmy Hart in Memphis because he didn't know what the fuck I was doing, and he sat up under it. He swears he didn't, but I know he saw it coming, and he's like, what the fuck is this? And he sat up, and I gouged his fucking chin way open with the butt of the racket handle. But anyway, it was a little trial and error. Yes, there was. but once again, and that's guys at that point had the opportunity to learn from guys that were way more experienced by working with them in the ring, with them in the locker rooms, riding with them in the cars, and being booked by them, and having them around every night. Grizzly Smith could tell you a few things about wrestling psychology, among many other things, but you try to find the good in some people. But you had that opportunity to learn not only the way that the business works from a psychology standpoint, but how to apply it to where you are in different positions. Because if we'd been being used in a different position as the second or third heel tag team, the guys down the card, we wouldn't have done any of those things that we did. We would have had to do different things. And in another territory, we might, so the point is you have to learn how to get yourself over in different fashions and functions, and the psychology of the matches when you're in different positions, and still not let the shit look phony or silly. And I guess now that I've been talking about it for the past half hour, it's harder than I fucking thought it was. Yeah, because I thought it was very easy. Very easy to fucking understand, but I may be wrong. Anyway, do you have anything to say before we bid the folks adieu for the new year?
Yeah, one last thing, just to circle back to the beginning of the show, wringing your brain out. What was it like when Ernie Ladd returned and Bill Dundee was the booker? Was he cool with that? Was it easy for him to fit back in even though he had been the booker there for so many times and just recently?
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, I think, honestly, I can't remember when he came back, whether he went back to Carolinas or whether he went anywhere. Ernie was winding his career up. He had been working since 63. And so when he came back over, because he was still living in Franklin, Louisiana. That's where his home was. And so he really just came back home and made a few shots. He wasn't making the goddamn, a 6-man tag in Houma, Louisiana. He made Houston. He made Oak City and Tulsa, as I recall. He made New Orleans. He might have been in Baton Rouge. He did a couple of matches with Magnum TA. He did several 6-mans. That's why I loved being able to manage him that time in Houston, because he'd played for the Houston Oilers. He was a legend in Houston. And for the previous 20 years, and then I managed him and the Midnight Express against the Rock and Roll and Hacksaw Doug, and that was cool. And he did. I won't say he didn't do any tank towns. I've mentioned he did that major show we did in Bogalusa, Louisiana, which sounds like a rib major show, and it did 3,500 people. But he wasn't full time anymore, and he'd come in. They booked him in, I remember, in Lake Charles, because it was easy. Franklin is not that far, right? He came in one night in Lake Charles or was it? Oh, fuck. Now I'm fucking up my own story. It wasn't Lake Charles. It was goddamn Lafayette, Louisiana. It was close to Franklin. And Ernie came in shorts and a old tank top. And as soon as he'd walk in, he'd have his bag in one hand, but he would grab a folding chair and he would drag the folding chair behind him to where he was going to go sit in the other hand. and he was chewing on fresh sugar cane. He just left home at like 5 o'clock, picked some fresh sugar cane, and was chewing on it as he comes into the locker room. He gets to hang out with the boys, gets a main event payoff, drives home, 45 minutes or whatever. It was perfect. And he wound his career down that way, doing a few different matches and working with a couple of guys, a favor to Bill, etc. That he was perfectly cool. He wasn't trying to book anything. He only, unless it was time at the sugarcane field, or he knew the best catfish place in every fucking town in Louisiana. Sometimes you need to wring your brain. But it was fucking great. And you'd see him, and at that point, his knees looked like grapes on a toothpick. His knees were just so huge and had so many scars. And he didn't ever straighten his legs out completely, whether he was walking or working or sitting or anything. They were always slightly bent. So he had that way but his hands were as big as catcher's mitts. And his fucking feet were goddamn whatever the fuck the promo said, 16 or 18 or whatever the fuck it was, right? And when he would come in, you could tell the knees were bothering him and they looked just horrible. And he was walking kind of squatted, but he'd be dragging that chair. It looked like a standard folding chair in Ernie Ladd's hand, looked like one of those little grade school fucking chairs for kids. And he'd have the big wrestling bag, and he'd have the sugar cane in his fucking mouth, and he'd sit down. And if Crusher Khrushchev, Barry Darsow, was first one I heard him say this to, because when Darsow had come down from Minnesota, he was one of the Road Warrior class and the Sharky class, and etc. And Ernie could see he had potential and could move maybe even a little bit better than those guys. But so he even took him under his wing and even stayed with him a little while when they all lived in Baton Rouge. And he'd say, Fat Darsow, come here and sit under the learning tree. And you'd come and you'd sit over next to wherever he'd set up camp, and he would go over whatever the fuck that he had seen you doing that obviously you were insane for doing, and here's what you ought to do. And it'd all make perfect sense. And then you would nod and thank him and move on. And even if it wasn't advice you wanted to hear, the one time when they were going to shave my head, and I wasn't real happy about it, is I'd let them pluck my head like a boiled egg. But Ernie, you have enough cachet in the business that they'd give you a big payoff for it, and I didn't get that much from it. But over the year, I got plenty in return for the head shaving. I just didn't see it at the time, since I was a 23-year-old pussy magnet at that point. And it was very, very traumatizing. I was back before adult men actually made themselves bald on purpose, and it became a thing.
The best thing about the video is the close-up of your face when you see Bobby Fulton come in the ring, and you could read your lips. You go, Bobby, fuck you!
Yeah, it's a fucking Bic disposable, you motherfucker. He was shaving my goddamn skin off my head more than the hair. We had a clipper malfunction, and the scissors broke, and I had quite a mane back in those days, and it was very hot and sweaty, and it didn't work. It was like they were pulling each hair out individually with that fucking Bic disposable that he had probably just shaved his fucking coin purse with in the locker room. The more I think about it, because Bobby was slicker than cum on a gold tooth. He had gotten into the bodybuilding and oiling phase, and he was shaving everything. I don't know what kind of cracks and crevices that fucking Bic disposable that he shaved my head with might have previously. Fuck out. Now you've ruined my new year. First, you've ruined my new year at the top and the bottom. It was New Year's Day that you ruined it with this fucking audio fiasco. Me trying to set something up to do something to make you pleased with me. And now you've made me think about that razor scraping over the top of my head with his fucking ball sweat all over just smeared all over it.
Well, now you can sit back and listen to your mixtapes and feel better.
That's right. Because if you like what you see and you want to be with me, baby, shoot me with your love gun. Girl, any day, any place that you want me in your face, baby, shoot me. Pull the trigger. Put your finger on the trigger. When you pull it back, I figure. Then now you're ready for the fire.
Every one of his songs is fucking filthy. every single one of his songs. Like even the ones they played on the radio. You go back and you listen now, you're like, I can't believe they played this on the radio.
Hold me sweet and hold me steady. When you shoot me, I'll be ready. I'm going to shoot you with desire. I'm swimming in it over here, ladies and gentlemen. All right, anyway, but here for music and wrestling, there's a romp down memory lane for you folks. Are we going to do something similar to this next week, or are we going to do a good show?
I think we should try a good show next week.
All right, we'll see what happens. Anyway, Happy New Year, everybody. And once again, except for all you fucking dick licks that supported Trump, it's your fault we're in all this, and I wish you nothing but ill and the worst. But in parting, in the new year, now more than ever, I think we do need to pledge allegiance as a cult, the cult of Cornette, all of us together. And of course, these are available still at JimCornette.com. The sale don't stop with the holidays, folks. It's 24/7, 365 at JimCornette.com. We pledge allegiance to the leader of the mighty cult of Cornette and to the pro wrestling for which he stands. No blow-up dolls, dick spots, or dance routines with blood sellouts and shoot angles for all. And peace and soul and all that other stuff. Goodbye.